Welcome to the Playbook, presented by FanFood, a discussion around how leaders are modernizing today's customer experience through technology in sports, entertainment, and hospitality. I'm your host, Rob Cressy, and joining me today is Troy Machir, Senior Manager, Content Strategy at Rush Street Interactive. Troy, super excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Can you give a quick overview on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Troy Machir, like you said, Senior Manager of Content Strategy for Rush Street Interactive and Bet Rivers. I oversee all the social media and content direction of Bet Rivers and Play Sugar House, the online sportsbooks and casinos. So really excited that sports are back and you know, we're getting back to what we usually are because there's a lot of action going on.
Oh, it feels so good to have sports back. And boy, there is a plethora of them. And I look at this past weekend, we had golf, you had NBA, you had MLB, you have NHL. It's just like there's so much goodness going on. And it feels good to be part of the community again and be part of something that we all get to root for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things you're seeing is this reminder that perhaps we've taken sports and lots of things for granted. So when it goes away for only a quarter of the year, it's like it's something we've never ever gone through. So it's this big hole in our lives. And so now that it's back and sports are only back at 25% capacity. We don't have a real NBA playoffs or real NHL playoffs, a shortened baseball season, but you're seeing how much people missed it and how much it matters that sports, not just gambling, but all sports are part of people's lives. And you just see how big this past weekend was. And that was like any of a number of normal summer weekends in the sports world, but it means so much because we haven't had it for so long. And
this really means a ton for non-football sports. I think about the popularity of golf, and I was actually marinating on this week. I think golf as a whole is in for a big revival, both from the casual fan playing golf as well as people consuming golf. And why is that? Because we're spending more time at home. We have fewer options of things to do. Living in Chicago, we don't have street festivals. We don't have Cubs games. We don't have concerts. We don't have Lollapalooza. So the things that we would normally do, because what's one of the reasons why we don't golf? Well, you know what? I just don't have 5 hours to golf. Now you're like 5 hours. Sign me up for that.
Yeah. And I think, over the past decade, golf has really done an excellent job building up the dearth of top quality competitors. When Tiger Woods was coming up during the era of Tiger, it was him and a handful of other people. And now while there is no Tiger Woods, there are dozens of top flight golfers who all are recognizable by name. And so allowing them the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of unencumbered publicity on television is going to help the sport in the long run. So people in 2 years, when Colin Morikawa is in the final group of the Masters, a larger percentage of the people will already know who he was because they weren't competing with all these other things to watch him win 2 tournaments in the summer of 2020.
And related to this, what we're actually going to be jamming about today is sort of the intersection of sports betting, technology, and fan engagement. And I certainly think that sports betting is one of the reasons why golf, baseball, and some of these other sports are so popular now. Of course, we all miss sports so much, but I even just think about my own consumption. You take someone like Morikawa or Tony Finau or these players that you've never really thought of before, but now you've got a simple way to root for them. And golf, for the longest time, with it being an individual sport, it's like, how do you build a personal connection to anyone who isn't Tiger Woods or Phil or Rory? There was only maybe 5 or fewer golfers that the casual fan may know. But now all of a sudden, sports betting has opened up the world to say, wait a second, we can create a new narrative to engage fans in a way that everyone wins. We, the consumer, wins, the sports betting operators win, and ultimately the leagues and organizations and teams win because we all care about sports a lot more now because we have a vested interest.
Yeah. And I think there's also just the aspect of, in a golf tournament, you have 4 days if your player makes the cut, 4 days to invest in them. And you can invest long-term in a futures for a tournament winner or top 20, top 10 finish. But you can also do real-time betting in the moment. So it's unlike where you put down a futures bet on a baseball team and you have to wait 162 games. But it's also different where you're just betting on the Suns line tonight, where it's going to be over in 2 hours, where golf is that intersection of being able to do real time. I want to bet on however this golfer does on the 6th hole, or I'm going to invest in him over the next 4 days. So it has that short, middle, and long-term distance in one weekend, where a lot of sports to do futures, you got to sit it out the whole year and hope that you're right. Whereas this is really a futures for the next 4 days, which is a good balance for people who aren't committed to year-long betting.
Which I really believe is perfect for the current mindset of the new fan, because the new fan likes LeBron James. They followed him from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland, now to LA. But guess what? They aren't just saying, I'm a Cavs fan.
No.
So the same mindset is going true, where guess what? I could like Tony Finau for just this weekend. Next weekend, I could be fading Tony Finau. And the same goes true for all of the NBA and these other sports, where the relationships are much shorter, but a lot more passionate. And when we think about fan engagement, I know there's a variety of different things that we want, but I think that we need to start thinking about things in terms of short-term opportunities and long-term opportunities, because they're both right there for us.
Yeah. And I think that's, what golf does well is the mixture of both. It doesn't sink you in for the whole year. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people couldn't tell you when the golf season starts and ends, other than the 4 majors. So, and there's with the fields for each tournament, there are some weeks where Tony Finau is the best player in the event and has been right there. So it's good because there's not enough noise that you'll forget all of this if you want to. You're not competing with the 3 horse racing events. You're not competing with major boxing events. You're not competing with an Olympic year or a World Cup year or NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. So it really is the perfect time for a sport like golf to really shine and gain publicity when it's, when you look at one of its kind of counterparts in tennis. Tennis has gone the other direction in terms of kind of putting a pause on all their major tours. And there is tennis every week of lots of different leagues and calibers, but the top end tennis has gone away during the pandemic, whereas golf has been front and center, and you're seeing more people become comfortable with golf, where tennis, I feel like, could be in a similar scenario, but have chosen to go the direction they have, which is totally fine.
And we didn't intend to make this golf focused, but guess what? I think there's some great narratives to this. And
Absolutely.
Let's take it this next step further on the technology side of things, because golf had always been seen as boring, slow, regressive. It's like wearing pleated khakis and driving a Buick. Like, that's what the perception of golf was. But guess what we're seeing right now is shot tracker. So when that boom, you see the drive, it goes right there. And then you see the putting, how far it is. And then the percentage of likeliness of make. And what they're doing is they're adding in a technology part of this to enhance the fan experience, because guess what? That is the new standard, because we have so many things vying for our attention normally, but certainly right now with this reset, you're going to have to say, sure, it's nice that we've got games or matches going on, but if tennis were to start back up again, does that mean that immediately everyone's going to start jumping on board with that? No, there needs to be an added element for the fans that says, all right, how can I make it more relatable so that when Novak Djokovic drills an ace at 110 miles an hour, how can we sitting on our couch watching this on a Sunday relate to it more like we can? There's a 17% chance of Jason Day making this 21-foot putt.
Yeah, and I think one thing that golf does have going for it that the other sports don't is that there is no other side. The golfers are competing against themselves and the course. So, yes, I suppose if other people just start heating up, there's nothing you can do, but you can't control the other side of the game or match. Whereas, you bettors feel more comfortable laying down money on someone because it doesn't matter what the other side does because there is no other side. I think it's really interesting. And golf is also a slow sport. It's a slow sequential sport, where you have different sequences and different situations come up where you have enough time in between to place new bets. where in basketball, it's a little bit harder to live bets. Now you can, and I've done this recently, where you're watching a game and you see a team catch fire from 3. We have options to bet on what the next made field goal will be, if it will be a 3-pointer. However, by the time you do all that, you're already 5 possessions into the game because basketball is so fast. So, everyone has their own formula. Everyone has their own statistics that they look for. But the variance of the game and how it's played, I think, takes a huge account into what you're able to do and how quickly.
So let's dig a little bit deeper into this from the sports betting side on the importance of tech, because I really believe the real opportunity is around mobile and technology. Because one, the casual fan is going to slowly be adopting this stuff, but mobile and live betting are the 2 biggest opportunities. Of course, sports betting brands would love for people to come into the casinos, but the reality of the situation is we live in a second screen world. So when we're watching the Lakers in the playoffs, people are going to be sitting there on their phone, on Twitter, on Instagram, and now sports betting needs to be forward thinking enough to say, all right, what can we do to get a piece of that fan engagement so that they can continue to come back to us over and over again? And you guys really help assist on the technology side of things. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think the goal is to make a place where you have the most interactive, competitive, and engaging options and information for people to use real time. And I think that is the key, is real time. A sporting event is completely emerged. We are a part of every facet of it, and we don't want to be beleaguered by ads or spinning wheels or things not working. In the money industry, it's our money and we want to be able to do whatever we want with it. So having those options in real time, and having the statistics and having the proper, I think honestly a big thing for me is competitive lines. Is making sure that the games we're playing are always competitive and as honest as possible, because we want to give people the chance to win. We also want to keep people engaged in what's going on. And as the industry grows bigger, there will be competition. And I think, the more competitive we are with other outlets, the better chance we have. And it gives people more opportunity. This should be fun. This should be fun and something where you never want to stop. And that's what we're trying to get towards, is where game after game. Today, there's, we got 6 games on the docket the next couple days for the NBA. So we want people to be able to engage for all 6 games.
I believe that's actually going to be one of the biggest challenges of the industry, knowing how early we are in the legalization of things across the United States. So there are very few choices in Illinois in terms of a legal sports book. So oftentimes you may be the only game in town, and what is the line that is going to be offered? And there is an opportunity for sports books, in theory, to give we're used to -110 for a traditional line. For the people who aren't familiar with this, it's like, hey, there's a 10 cent on every dollar amount that you pay as a VIG to the sports book for doing all of this. But really, a sports book can say, well, instead of it being -110, let's make it -117. And all of a sudden, we as the sports fans, we see that and you're like, well, wait a second. Why in the world are you charging me more? And then the next level above that goes, well, you're in Illinois, so we're going to make the Cubs -135 because we know that more people are going to be betting the Cubs. And you're like, well, wait a second. Yeah. Why are you screwing me? And it becomes the sports book versus the sports fan on the pricing. And while being the only game in town, it's hard for people to go somewhere else. But I believe the challenge becomes the user acquisition and the adoption. If the casual fan knows that you guys aren't giving us the best lines from a pricing standpoint, they may not be as apt to download and deposit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when, you get to a place where there's more than one option to download and deposit. So I think, making it, providing the options for people to engage the most is something that I know each and every one of us is focused on. And again, for me, hey, if you make the line a little bit in my favor, I'll take a flyer. I'm a dogs guy, man. I bet the dogs all the time. And so if I see that plus sign next to it, and it was, minus 104, but you decided to be generous and go plus 105, I'm in. So, it's very much the, happy hour specials. And hey, right now, instead of that 24-ounce beer, do you want a 38-ounce beer? Who's ever going to say no? So that's, the types of in-the-door casual fun things that will get me to say, I don't know, to yeah, that's what we're looking for.
And let's talk about opportunities. I completely agree, because what you just gave me is an example of how you feel like the book is being your friend. Over the course of time, the book has never, the casinos have never been our friend. They're only there to take money. And when you and I jammed before, we talked about one of the biggest opportunities when it comes to fan engagement for these sports book operators is, how do you make your audience feel like you're betting with Big Cat from Barstool Sports? And the reason we talked about this is this everyone is together community mindset. Win or lose, we're betting with Big Cat. And why is that so important? Because as fans, we want to feel a connection. We want to feel like we are with someone. And quite frankly, marketing 101 is, can you make a fan feel like a friend to your brand?
Absolutely. And I think that's especially now more than ever. There are no sports bars. There are no tailgates. There are no, bleacher creatures. There are no 400 sections. So all we have is this really fun, free website called Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So we now more than ever are looking to come together and root on something together. And for lots of people, that is one specific team with the specific colors and a specific jersey. But for a lot of us, it's the lines and the numbers, and we go back and forth depending on what game is being played. So I think it's really important for us to ultimately have a really strong relationship with the user, because time over time, it needs to be a relationship, not a transactional approach where you're just coming to us for a business. No. This is all together. This is sports. We're all sports fans. So we should be in this together. And I want our relationship with each user to be like we would at a bar where, yeah, sure, you can have one of my chicken wings as long as I know you're getting the next basket.
Yeah, and I think we can even break this down in a non-sports betting standpoint for brands. And let's just think about this in terms of regular sports. There are brands out there who can and will comment on what is going on a real-time basis in the world of sports. And there's a huge opportunity for brands to stand out, to build relationships, and deepen that connection with sports fans by having their pulse on what's going on, but doing so in a way, like you said, that's like your friend at the sports bar. Because sports fans, we can tell when something doesn't pass a sniff test, when it is so generic where it's like nice basket by LeBron, as opposed to having something that has a good brand voice and tone to it, like we would talk about using GIFs or memes if we're talking about Twitter, and really immersing yourself in the sports landscape in the Twitter sphere. Because I think Twitter, of all platforms, when it comes to sports fan engagement on the real-time side of things, Twitter is where it is, because we're all watching this same game together. And it's the community aspect that we've missed so much that we're so looking forward to. So that's where there's an opportunity for brands outside of sports betting just to be part of the sports narrative.
Oh yeah, because every game is just an open conversation online. And, while we all are passionate about your team winning or losing, the amount of times I've been watching one of my teams lose and really paying more attention to Twitter, because that's where the discussion, that's where I learn stuff, that's where I laugh, that's where I get frustrated. So I think it's all about the relationship, because ultimately it's like, when I go to a sports bar, I'm going to go to a sports bar where I know the bartender who I know is going to top me off for free or have some small talk. You look for the things that make you feel comfortable and make you feel like, regardless of the overall outcome, it's worth your time and energy spent. And I think that's, in any transaction, that's the most important thing for a brand, is to make sure that the person does not feel like a transaction. They feel like it's worth it.
And we can even get tactical on this. So it's like, all right, Rob and Troy, we're a brand. We want to engage sports fans. How in the world do we do this? what I recommend is literally creating a sports social media strategy for your brand on how you want to engage fans around sports. Know what's coming up from a sports calendar side of things. So we had the PGA Championship. That's one of the majors. We've got the NBA playoffs starting soon. We got the NHL playoffs in swing. The NFL is coming up here, and have an idea of the forward landscape. And one thing related to this tangentially, you had said to me previously, change doesn't happen unless you are thinking ahead. And this works both for the technology side of things as well as the fan engagement side, because one trap brands oftentimes fall into is they're reactive instead of being progressive. You know that a PGA Championship's coming, so you've got someone on your Twitter account who's watching, who's planning. You know what our calls to action are going to be during this, as opposed to, oh my God, this didn't work, well, we were just tweeting and then these things happen there. Talk a little bit about change and how you need to think ahead, both on the tech side as well as the fan engagement side.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is being strategy planning, being prepared. Those are the most important things for trying to capitalize on a major tentpole event. And it's tricky because with sports, you can plan and prepare all you want, but if the game is a dud, or if what you thought could happen didn't pan out, then it's a lot of exhaustion and over effort. But I think if you're original and honest with your ideas, then you can do a good enough job creating the content and creating the atmosphere that even if you're building towards this rematch game of the century and it's an absolute dud, everyone it's not the end result, it's ultimately the journey of how you got there, which is all sorts of corny cliches that old coaches have told me when we've lost championship games. It's not really about winning the championship, it's about what you acquired getting to this point. So I think that is like we've been discussing, the journey, the previous 59 minutes and 59 seconds of a game are just as important as the final shot towards building your brand. If you're consistent and have a plan and have reoccurring content themes on a weekly and game by game basis, then regardless of the result, your fans are going to come back because they know what they're getting themselves into, and they're signing up for 2 hours of jokes, engagement, stats, information, all that.
I think one of the challenges yet opportunities of the industry is brands and people who are new to sports betting. Why is it an opportunity? Because so many people are new to sports betting. Why is it a challenge? Because so many people are new to sports betting and don't understand it. And so often, whether in sports betting or tech or social media, if you don't understand it, it is not as easy to take action because you're not as confident about it. The more confident you are about something, the more action you are going to take. So dig a little bit from your perspective into the newness of sports betting and what people or brands can do to better increase their learning curve, also from a marketing side of things.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think there are two large pots of it, which is the traditional smart betting public and then the casual sports fan. And those two sides could not be more dissimilar in knowledge base and passion for that knowledge. And that spectrum of knowledge in sports betting is sharper and more aggressive than I think a lot of other niche industries, niche sports, because of the number of financial and inter-industry buildup. So it's twofold. You have to speak the smartest to the smartest people who don't want to be BS'd, but you also have to slow play and bring along and educate the people who know it's interesting, but are just far behind in terms of the rules, the regulations, how you do it. I think anyone who's ever watched, a major football game, they know what spreads and lines and odds are, but they may not know what they mean. So you really have to educate the people furthest behind and keep the smartest people ahead fresh so they're not getting frustrated. And somehow you have to do that both, talking to both sides.
So what are you guys doing at Bet Rivers or Rush Street to help on this education component? Because I believe there is a good opportunity to combine tech plus education to say, listen, we know that the biggest opportunity isn't actually the diehard fan. It is actually the casual fan who may play fantasy football, not a diehard, but they wouldn't mind having a few jelly beans on there. What can we do to better engage them, knowing they're not as likely to deep dive on this?
Well, I think first and foremost is infuse as much information as we have with the basic payouts, is explaining not just that this person has such and such odds, but that if you bet this much on this person, you would make such and such money. Because I think, again, after a while, it doesn't really matter how big the odds are if they don't understand how that translates to the money in their pocket. So education on payouts and just what this bet means, as simple as it sounds, is a really, really strong practice, because it's the theory of, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we have lots of people who are casual sports fans, especially now where gambling is moving up, because we don't have tailgates, we don't have sports bars, we don't have the games itself. You're seeing more and more people get closer to the sports betting industry. So we need to educate all those people. So even the newest people know exactly what they're getting themselves into, because it can be a slippery slope. But we want to educate, inform, and give people the best information possible, so it's fun and hopefully lucrative.
What do you think, looking forward, is going to be the path for brands to be more part of this? I know we mentioned, hey, from a social media marketing standpoint, there is an opportunity, but brands are already in sports, but being in sports and being in sports betting are two different things. And not everyone's a team, not everyone's a league, not everyone's a big company, not everybody's a small company. So there's a wide variety of here. So what do you see looking forward in terms of brand integration regarding sports betting in some capacity?
Yeah, I think it honestly, long term, it comes down to accessibility and just how seamless you are with that. So you have to have a spotless app. You have to have an excellent website. The time it takes to use, you have to be user friendly. I think that's when you're providing a product of any kind in 2020 and beyond, where everything is at their fingertips. Fans and users, after a while, they don't want to be explained how to do it. They just want to know how to do it intrinsically. And if it's not there in front of them, if they can't figure it out, then it's going to be a turnoff for them. So I think product and tech is just so important, because with every year, there's going to be new companies, new people learning more about this industry and wanting to get involved. So the people who are already there have to be established and lead the way in terms of how good the product is, because other people will come along with that same type of product. So we need to be the most engaging, the cleanest, the most efficient, because we want to be a leader, and we want people to, when they are sports betting in each state, to say Bet Rivers is the one to be using.
And I think that is a fantastic point you just made. And it makes me think about something called the mom test. And you know what the mom test is? You ask your mom if you know about an athlete and who they are. So if you say, Mom, who is Tiger Woods? She'll go, oh, I know Tiger Woods. Boom. But if you say, Mom, who is Collin Morikawa? She'll be like, I have no idea who you are talking about. Well, the same goes true for apps and anything with technology. Go to the mom test. If you were to give your mom that app from a user functionality standpoint, could she be able to figure this out without having to be explained very much? If the answer is yes, congratulations. Yeah. You created a user-friendly app. But if all of a sudden your mom looks at it and is like, I have no idea what in the world's going on there, well, guess what? Because so often one of the challenges companies run into is they know so much about this that they over-create or over-tech for their audience. And what we care about most is actually going to be ease of use, may not be added features.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree. And I also think, one thing that just helps overall is how much it's talked about in the public. And over the past 5 years, the gambling world, the intersection has just opened up. It's no longer wink, wink, nod, nod. But it really does help, I think, when you have massive events like Leicester City winning the EPL. because the entire story wasn't just that this was some unheralded team no one had ever heard of. It's the largest underdog ever in any major competition. So the more we have big things like that, like driving home the fact that when the Suns beat the Bucks or the Nets beat the Bucks, it was the largest spread upset of the last 15 years. Even if people aren't familiar with all the ins and outs, tie major sporting events or sports news on a week-to-week basis with some betting information, not so far down the rabbit hole, but if you can merge the two worlds together out in the open, people will slowly pick up on it, and then you're building that next generation of users.
And you know what all that breaks down to? One word: stories. Be a great storyteller as a brand. If you do so, you can weave together sports betting with anything going on in the world of fan engagement. Troy, really enjoyed jamming with you. Where can everybody connect with you?
Yeah, betrivers.com. We have blog.betrivers is where we're writing all our previews and posting a ton of content. Also at betrivers on Twitter and Facebook, and then at Troy Machir, Machir. I tweet a ton. Now more because sports are back. That's that's just part of it is knowing every day at 6 p.m. I turn on TV and I got baseball games to choose from. It's so fun that our favorite thing is back and we have different ways to enjoy it and engage with it.
And as always, I would love to hear from you about this episode. 1, if you are a fan, are you a sports bettor? If so, let us know a little bit more about how that happened. And number 2, if you're with a brand, I'm curious to hear where, if all, sports betting is at on your marketing and fan engagement mindset. You can hit up FanFood on Twitter at FanFood On Demand, on Instagram at FanFood App, or on LinkedIn. And as always, you can hit me up on all social media platforms at Rob Cressy.